to the mic to quickly repeat their first name. We had a little bit of trouble hearing some of your names, and the folks in this room on our side of the globe will be introducing themselves to you as well as they step up to the camera. So let's begin. I'll ask the same question that I asked my class moments ago. Did everyone have an opportunity to read the case study?
Yes.
On your side of the globe. Excellent.
I think everybody read it.
Okay. All right. So questions for our friends in Panama and questions for everyone in this room. What stood out in the case for you?
What?
The amount of money they pay the workers in the factory in Mexico.
Okay. Does anyone want to address the question here? What stood out in this case for you? And you'll step up to the camera. Come on board.
Yes, he's his Lotus now.
We have one of my fine students coming to the camera. Her name is Bridget Nova.
Hello, my name is Bridget. Something that stood out to me was the same thing as what the girl, I don't know, I think it was Maria, right?
Yep.
About being Mexican workers. As a woman, I thought that it was likely unfair for that the job was only done by a woman. So that's something that stood out to me a lot.
Anything else?
And something else that stood out is that the pay that they got. You know, here in this country we don't get paid $5 an hour. And they just work for whatever they could get, and it's a lot of labor that they're doing for that amount of money.
Good job. Thanks.
Anyone else want to contribute any thoughts in response to that question? Keely? Oh, Keely, come on up. Yeah.
And here comes yet another fine Armstead student.
and a fine Thompson student. So you are Professor Armstead. We have two.
Oh, okay.
But you have more to the table.
Keely. One of the things that stood out to me was the fact that they were only allowed 2 bathroom breaks for the whole 12-hour shift that they worked. I'm not used to being limited on how many times I have to use the restroom. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Lewis. How's everybody doing tonight? I was going through the case study. I saw, to sympathize with what he just said. Seemed like 2 20-minute breaks, and not much time, I guess, to stop and actually, I can imagine there was one thing in there. They were saying that there were injuries with their hands, and then and that's got to be pretty bad, and they're only getting paid, about $5.20 an hour a day, and I'm sorry, yes, a day, yeah, and that I'm sure the cost of living is much lower there, but still, how can you live on that? That really stood out to me. As well as, like I said, the injuries they were sustaining, and that the amount of hours they're working, I believe it's 12-hour shifts, and they had these specific quotas that the women had to make, where they were concerned with not making their quotas, and stopping, because they were getting treated, differently. They were getting, it seemed like they were getting yelled at if they, didn't meet their quota, and they were, because they're not making a lot of money, they're probably struggling to provide for their families, and that must put a lot of stress on them on top of, their conditions that they're working under. So that really stood out to me, and I'll pass it back to you guys. Thank you.
I have the same opinion as them.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. According, my name is Wilfred. Sorry, for the ones who didn't. According to what everybody has said about the conditions and the money that people earn in Mexico, something that I have to say, living in a country like Panama that is similar in the conditions as Mexico, if we have to see it as a point of view as a business person. These owners of the company in the USA are taking the opportunity to get the cheaper labor, and these people are working there because in their countries they don't have other opportunities for work. So that's better than nothing. I'm not saying that that's the best condition, but I'm saying that we cannot be in the position to criticize a business person because they are putting people through work like that. That's the conditions that their country's law allow. I'm pretty sure they are not doing it against the Mexico's law of working, and that's the salary in Mexico. And so these people are taking the advantage of working in that with that salary, not because they want to be rude and paying less than they deserve. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tracy Elliott, and what stood out for me was the fact that the marketing department, which is half men, half women, didn't realize that their target market is, college students, and that how this affects, their future. Also, Mr. Kears, which who cares is perfectly right. It really gives you an idea of who he really is, which is his name, and that he doesn't even know what's really going on in his company. I mean, there's a marketing department. Do they visit? Do they know what's going on? And the fact that they do have issues with conditions and they're not addressing it tells me that they're not going to really make it either way. So,
to Diego's point and to the concerns, the issues that have been observed by the good students in Professor Armstead's class and the good students in my class, Diego, you said something interesting. So from
it wasn't me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I knew I was going to mess up names like I did before. Who's the young man who spoke a moment ago?
Wilfred.
Wilfred. I'm sorry, Wilfred. Now I'll remember. You made a very interesting point. Do people who own business enterprise have any responsibility of care with respect to their workers? What I hear you say, what I understood you to say, is that is not a responsibility that they should take on. Is that right? And does anyone in this room have a counter view to that business people, business owners don't have the responsibility of care? Anybody want to respond to that? Or do you want to elaborate on that?
Can I say something else about that to make it a little clearer? It's not only about that they have the responsibility or not to. It's more that they are in countries like Mexico, and I believe that was a long time ago. The bigger problem is the work. They don't even have work. People in countries like Honduras, more than half of the people doesn't even have a job. So this is not even a bad scenario. It's an opportunity of a workplace. They open work spots for people. So if you see it that way, that person that is working there for $5 a day was making nothing before because they didn't have any job. Because if they are there, it's because they had no other choice. So their economy in the country and the help of the governors in their country is the one that is responsible for the conditions, not the businessman from the United States.
Okay.
All right, Maria wants to say something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I understand
Wilber's point of view, but I think the U.S. People, the salesmen, all the things, the company should worry about the manufacturers of their clothes and their conditions, because when they are in the factory, they're not like they're not breathing well. They're not being like in an environment that is good for them, that is healthy. They have like numbness in their fingers, and it's pretty bad for them. They have to be a little bit more flexible, and at least let them go more to the bathroom, let them breath fresh air or something like that in between all those times. You don't have like 20 minutes for lunch or something like that in a 12-hour shift. So I think that they should be a little more flexible and like look into their workers' health.
Thank you. I'm going to turn the camera over to Sean Townsend, who wants to add her comments.
Hi. In regards to having care for workers, I find that especially in factory labor environments, you find that there's little or no care at all. It's all about production and profitability. And I feel that they prey on the employees, especially who they know are in need and in dire need for these jobs. So what do we do from here, and what would be our recommendations, I believe, in situations like this is that there should be more laws and regulations put in place for these factories so that better care is taken for their employees.
One of the questions that was posed was who has the power. So if we think about who the stakeholders are, who are some of the stakeholders that might have power to, persuade what happens in these places?
It all depends on who is responsible for these factories. Like in some small countries, the government is the major stakeholders, as well as you have private stakeholders. So it all depends on what country it is.
Now, Wilford had mentioned that the customers have power to make changes. How could a customer affect change as far as these poor work conditions?
Well, I've seen many documentaries where they speak bad about Bob Knight, the owner of Nike, because of the conditions that their workers work in Honduras and in Indonesia, I think is another place. But people still buy them. So if the law in the
I'm sorry, Wilford. Could you repeat what you started saying just a little bit louder? We missed just the very beginning. Sorry.
Okay, sorry. That I was saying that how the customers can be can have an influence in this matter. I've seen documentaries about Bob Knight, the owner of Nike, where they speak bad about him because of the conditions they have in Honduras and in Indonesia for their workers' factories. But people still buy Nike products a lot. And if their countries and the laws in their countries, as this lady was saying, doesn't do anything for their people, for the conditions of working in the people, why should Bob Knight will be willing to care about that? I'm not saying that he must be on humanitarian, but why, if these people is not doing anything at all for their own people, why then is the responsibility for the businessman if he's still selling and he's still doing good profit?
That's why it's important to have regulations, I believe.
Exactly.
So that these things can be prevented.
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead. Orion.
Hi, my name is Oriel. Okay, my opinion on this case is that the problem here is not the salary that they are paying. The problem here is the condition, the working condition in the company. In Mexico, the law says that you have to protect your workers, so they have to be in a safety environment, and they are not. They have to. The company and the government have the responsibility that the people work in a good condition. So here, in this case, this type of companies take advantage of little towns in Mexico or in Latin America or in Asia with the worst education condition, the worst climate of living, and they take care of that, and they take advantage of that, and that's the problem here.
Hi.
Oye,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Jennifer. What I was thinking is that coming from the U.S., the owners, you would think that maybe they would treat them different, because coming from here, we don't get slaves as the way they were treated, and and going to somewhere to a different country, you would kind of change that and want to make your company better and want to respect the people that works for you, that's helping you make this money. That's all.
Hi. Yeah, I agree with you. I think your name was Jennifer. I think that they should help their workers, because they're the people that make those jeans for them. And also, even though they're in Mexico, and we know that the economy there isn't really good these days, but the thing is that at least they should try to help and not be like the part of the group, like always these big companies treat super badly their workers. So I don't know, they should make the difference, and also because their target market are the college students. That's one of the things that really surprised me, because their jeans sell like I remember if it was $54. I wouldn't buy a $54 jean. I don't buy $54 jeans because
She buys $80 jeans.
no, I don't. See. Okay, the thing is that okay, so if the target market are college students, I believe that they can actually lower the price, because that could even help their business be more successful. Because I think, as I was reading the case, that they were having a bit of trouble, or they were saying if they lower the price, it will be like that the business could end. But I think that if the target is college students, they should definitely lower the price, and as long as for the workers, they should improve at least for, as Maria said, they should have the chance to breathe fresh air. And her name was Patricia Gomez. She was worried because of the numbness of her fingers. As I was reading that, I was shocked, because even though she gets paid like $5 a day, that's a lot for her, and she really appreciates that job. And it was so sad reading that she was worried for the numbness of her thumb.
Just a fact. Here in Panama, 20% of the population live with less than $1 per day. So it's not about the money, it's about the condition that you live.
Good evening, I'm Edgar. Just same thing stood out for me about the working conditions over there. And you would think, like, because some of the owners in Mexico, they're from Mexico. You would think they would take care of their own people, but they didn't. So one of the things I see also is the education. So if the owner is not well educated, how he can provide good conditions for the workers? Maybe they don't know at all. Maybe their father is just killing the factory or something like that. And also the options. People over there, they don't have options. Like Wilford said before, they don't have many options. Here we have options. We can choose if we want to work in a factory or not. But over there, unfortunately, they don't have the option. So it's up to government. They can make regulations, but again, if the inspector goes, they can buy the inspector. They can bribe him. So it's up to government and education. That's what I think.
I have one more thing to say. I'm sorry, I have one more thing to say. I was thinking about the numbness of their hands and stuff. I think that if they would put more breaks and give them a longer time break period, it would give them time to rest their hands instead of working a 12-hour shift with only a 20-minute lunch break and 2 bathroom breaks. That doesn't give them any time to heal and to think or anything. So, I mean, I work 8 hours sitting down all day, and I'm exhausted. And then I come to school and work, come to school for another 4 hours. So that's like a 12-hour day there. And that's, I can't even imagine how they do it. And doing machines all day, if they're even using machines, or if they're hand stitching these jeans all day, that's tiring. That's all.
Hi, Edgar mentioned that even if we do tighten regulations and government get involved, there's always a way where they can pay off or expenditures and stuff like that. What I think that if they're a U.S. company, that means it'll be best if U.S. send representative to let them understand that we do care that you're paying them $5 or $5 a day, that I can wear a dress instead of jeans, so that so you understand the seriousness of this. There's always going to be the little people and the big people pounding them, but it really, if we can't make rules and regulations there, but we can determine what we do here and what we wear here. And if it's a U.S. company and it's overseas and they're doing this, then I can determine, okay, well, I'm not buying that jeans anymore because I don't like the conditions in which they're being made. So it's an individual choice. No matter what, it's always an individual choice.
Thank you.
Bernard had a comment, I think.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Bernard. I'd just like to state that certainly a company is in business, to earn profit. So here we have Who Cares Jeans. They relocated to Mexico. They're able to save $1.50, per production, per pair of jeans. I think the production cost was $13 odd. They sell the jeans for $54. So they're making quite a substantial profit per item sold. Okay, so from the perspective of, shareholders, they're able to earn a considerable amount. From the ownership with having, their civic involvement, I think Mr. Kerr, by him accompanying those members on this fact-finding mission, he has shown his involvement and his willingness to at least see the conditions, that the workers are employed in. And maybe, by him even being willing to attend, he probably will want to institute some various changes. And there are several that need to be instituted. I think that when companies, send business overseas, really it's the overseas factory that controls the working environment. Certainly that company that, sent the business over can have inputs on the working conditions, but it typically falls on the company. And as Wilford was stating, it's giving these members an opportunity for employment to earn a salary. So that's the initial thing. Okay, so now these individuals are employed, they're earning some income. Now how can we make their working conditions more acceptable? They probably currently are in line with the average or typical Mexican factory working conditions. However, they are far below international and certainly U.S. standards, but that fact-finding mission will help bring all of those various shortcomings out, and hopefully Mr. Kerr will take an interest in trying to change things. I don't know that we have any organizations at the governmental level that ensures working conditions abroad meet standards that are in the U.S. So maybe there should be some sort of international standards for employees' conditions. It seems that many of our countries overseas probably are going through some of the conditions and standards that were employed in the U.S. in the early 1900s, and it's taken some time for the involvement for the working conditions to evolve to a standardized level where overseas that doesn't exist yet.
Thank you very much. So I want to take this moment to recap the issues, the broad and general issues that were addressed, and move the conversation a bit more towards the marketing perspective. So in reviewing the issue and the points of concern, we talked about the effect of workers, the negative effects of workers as it respects this particular case, and also as it respects working conditions and what the norm is. And we talked about standardization. We talked about issues of responsibility. Who is responsible for these workers, and where does the responsibility of care lie? Is that even a consideration in light of the interests of the business's profitability? Is that the only concern, or do we take the position that the first we have workers employed, and then there is some solution of will or of regulation that's implemented to make conditions better, if not, and that may or may not include salary. So these are some of the broad scope issues that are relevant in this case, but are also keenly relevant in from the perspective of a global economy and outsourcing from the U.S. of labor and industry. So to take a look again at the specific case. There was a mention about the controversy with Nike at the time that it became publicized here in the U.S. That the conditions of workers in Nike factories overseas were below the U.S. standard. And there was quite a bit of hubbub, and as was rightly pointed out, Nike has yet to go out of business. However, there was some backlash, and here in the United States and elsewhere, corporations do want to optimize their image, and they don't want to sacrifice a penny to the consumer who might go elsewhere if they believe that their purchasing power is enabling these kinds of negative situations. So there is some fallout. It is not monumental, or rather has not been as monumental enough to cause companies to go out of business wholesale, but there is pushback from consumer groups and activists and so forth. So from the perspective of marketing in that context, I just wanted to ask Albert to share some questions that are relevant to the position, the market position of this particular company in the context of what seems to be a brewing issue with their labor practices. So I'm going to ask Albert to pose another set of questions.
Thanks, Janet. We know that retailers are vast and wide, and we have lots of options when it comes to the retail market space. The fact of the matter is that if I don't buy a certain set of jeans, then I have thousands of options on jean purchases. So if I'm looking at the profitability or I'm concerned with the profitability of my corporation, and I want to protect that profitability, I have to protect the image that is in the consumer's mind. So my question to you is, how can Mr. Cares protect his brand name in this situation? What actions should he take, or what actions would be relevant to protection of the brand name?
To protect his brand name, he must be promote himself as a ethical working environment, great working conditions, as for many companies in the U.S. does to market themselves. But normally these places and these brands charge more for these goods. For example, if you go to a Publix, you'll find stuff more expensive than if you go to a Walmart. But you know that the workers in Publix have better conditions than the workers in Walmart. But people still go to Walmart and buy stuff cheaper.
What do you think of brand management? Like, what are ways that a company can manage the brand, especially in light of things like an example that I found was people created a Hostess Facebook page where it was related to poor working conditions. So how does a company kind of remanage the brand when things like this happen? What are like specific steps that they can take?
Like re-change the whole.
Look at the camera.
they can like change the whole scenario of the working conditions and promote it to all the world so that people know that they are taking actions in that matter. Also, charity. A lot of charity. I think it can be something that will help a brand make a better name of themselves. Somebody else?
Okay, we have someone else who wants to address that question.
Hi, good night. Good evening to everyone. My name is Luz Quesada. I'm in the third year, my bachelor's degree, and I was working about 3 years as a manager of retail store. And I do believe that when you give a good condition to the employee, or you give to them, you give it, you get it back to you. And about the question that how he can protect his brand is giving them the better condition. They don't have to wait for the government or the customer told them that they have to care about the employees. And if they give a good condition to their employees, they're gonna get it back. In more productivity. They're gonna get that money back when they protect their employees. Because in my own experience, when I care about the employees I have in charge of, I get that back. They work harder. They are happy. And when they come to work, they don't feel like a pain come to to work for us. They feel like I want to work because all I give, I get it back. And I do agree with somebody who says it's not about the money, it's about the condition. So that's all I can say. Thanks.
Okay, keep in mind when you're managing the brand, you are creating value in the company. And what Luz just said is pretty much on the money, because we have many examples of companies that use that very tactic to keep their brand image in a high place in the consumer mindset. You can think of hotel brands, you can think of retail stores, you can think of food stores, I'm sure that have reach around the world. So is there anyone else that has comment on how Mr. Cares could protect, preserve, and maybe even expand on his brand?
You could think about it, a lot of companies now, sustainability is very, and they use that as a way to market their product and even charge more for the product. So do you think it would be an effective marketing campaign to say, we care about our employees, and have a tagline that relates to, fair labor practices, no child labor type thing?
Could be.
Use that to promote the brand?
Right now.
And do you think people would be willing to pay more for that?
Yeah,
Europe or in States, not
You say like the recyclable from something different, and they will buy it. You put a good marketing campaign, you advertise that it will help to some charity or something like that. Like the towns have like one pair for you, one pair for children, and it didn't help. I think that's why Tom's was like so successful because of that. Because of that strategy.
So who has the most to lose in this situation? Is it the employees, or is it the Cares, or is it the retailers?
Who cares?
Why do you say that?
Certainly, from the employee's perspective, they want Who Cares to continue to be an employer there. who cares, being that they have now come in and established their footprint in the market, they and apparently are doing pretty well with selling jeans for $54 and only costing $13 to produce. Who cares? Basically can cut their profit slightly by improving the working conditions, giving themselves a much better image. The student who is along for the fact-finding mission, if Mr. Cares is interested in promoting his image and ensuring that Who Cares as a brand continues to be successful, will see and incorporate some of the changes that will be obviously found during his fact-finding mission. And by doing that, and possibly cutting the profit from, say, $40 per jeans to $39 per pair of jeans, and then that $1 going towards making the working conditions better, then Who Cares certainly would benefit mostly by instituting those changes, possibly small, to make the working conditions better, giving themselves a better image, and the student who is along with the fact-finding mission will certainly, state that once she returns back to Los Angeles, back to the University of California.
And so that's protection of the brand in and of itself.
You want to say something?
I was going to say, wait. I was going to give an example of how a company can give a new image, not like a really new image, but can do something different. McDonald's have many issues because of being healthy and clean and all the stuff, because McDonald's is not healthy. But they did another campaign, and they showed their gardens and all, when they have all the vegetables and feel it's refreshing and things like that. They tried to make a different image of McDonald's so people will buy more. And in the food they put fruit at the sides and things like that. So obviously that's not food we're talking about, but I think to take that example as a way the jeans company Who Cares can do something different and change themselves.
Okay.
So I understood the response to the question about who has the most to lose from that. It's the business that has the most to lose in this situation, which is an interesting perspective. Does anyone have any other response to that question about loss?
I don't
and
think.
Who has? Sorry?
I don't think it's the business the one that has the most to lose. It's the workers, because if they move from Mexico to China, people in Mexico will be out of work, and people in China will have work. In China, they have no good conditions at all. All the Apple gadgets are made in China, and everybody still buys them. They never will stop buying them. So I don't think the business is the one that loses. And in the case study, it says $1.50 that they save per piece. I don't think it's $1.50 at all, because salaries in this type of countries, salaries in Panama right now are about, let's say, $12 per day in the minimum, more or less, and it's getting high comparing to the neighbor countries. And $30 a day minimum or more. I think $30 a day is not even a full-time job in the United States. So whatever they're saving in salaries, that's big time. And whatever they save in infrastructure, in rent or land they buy, is also big time. That doesn't, the shipment they have to do is nothing compared to what they save. So even though they don't have good propaganda about propaganda, what is the word for? publicity. Yeah, they don't have good publicity for what the conditions of working. Still, they have a good enough margin that will keep them being profitable, and the ones that can lose are the workers, because they will be the ones that will be out of job if they don't want to work for them. If they decide they will go on a riot because of their conditions, they will find another country in the world, that is the majority of the countries in the world, that are willing to work for bad conditions. So that's my point. That the workers.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm going.
I listened to say practically the same thing as Wilfred, so.
Okay. Okay, there are two students here who would also like to respond.
Yeah, I want to agree with what he was saying, but I also want to project as a Spanish person. I actually think that this also happens in the U.S. If you think about it, a lot of people are working for less, and they don't care to get it as long as they have a job. For example, people who are here as immigrants, they're willing to work for whatever pay they get. And that's what's happening with the business here, that business are never going to lose, because eventually there's going to be, if somebody doesn't want to work for this amount of money, then somebody else is willing to, work for it, And I could give you an example. For example, women here work mostly cleaning houses. And most of them are willing to, they're like, okay, we'll pay you $5 an hour. And other women are like, no, I work for $8 an hour. And they're like, okay, well, I'll find somebody else who's willing to work for $5. And they make them clean the way they want them to clean. It's the way, it's not only Panama or Mexico or Spanish countries, it's all over. The business is always going to find someone who's going to do it for cheaper because of the amount of, jobs that people don't have, and I was noticing also in Spain and Europe also, people are, yeah. Somebody responding? Oh.
Keep going.
Oh no, I'm just saying it just gets me it's not only Spanish countries or China or whatever. It's also it's just the country, I think, that they take advantage of people who are willing to work for this amount of money, when they should be taking care of them. Because if you want the job to be done right, then you should take care of your workers. Maybe their hands wouldn't get numb and the workers would last longer, and make more the product better, and maybe that could benefit the business as well. And plus we have unions here. They're not going to make somebody go, work all these amount of hours, because then the business will go down. But they take advantage, okay, if I take my business to another country, they're not going to know what I'm doing with these workers, because the country allows it and the workers allow it, because they don't have a union to support them. So I think that if you're going to take your business to another country, you should take somebody who represents there and check, keep in check. They should have insurance. And some, for example, people the fruit industry. There's men out there working every day under the sun, and people, if they cut their fingers or anything, they, fire them. They don't treat them, or help them out, And in the country here, if you have workers, the company has to pay for medical bills, everything, So I think they should, if for example, you have a business here and you're taking it to another country, you should, bring the same rights that the country has to that country as well. So, yeah, that's all I got to say.
Hi, I'm Josie. I actually wanted to talk about the fact that I think the employees, they're the ones who would lose out, because I think for them, based on the economic situation in the country that they're in, and or the financial situation of the family, that's the only means of livelihood. And so most often they have a family to protect and to take care of, children, etc. And it's sort of how else would they put food on their table, feed them, take care of them, provide, their basic needs that they would need to continue to survive. And so when you look at the company, I mean, they're manufacturing this product very cheaply. The profit is very high. But just think, if it's not Mexico, if the workers don't want to work in Mexico, they could either go to a different part of Mexico where other workers will be willing to do the same thing, would work for the same money, because to them, they're very grateful to have a job and to be able to make just, you know, whatever it is, just to be able to survive. So I think that definitely the workers, they stand to lose the most over the companies.
Did anybody else want to add any comments to the perspective responsibility and what is sounding increasingly like a power issue, right? Because we talked about what corporations could, should, are, or are not doing. We talked about the consumer role in this. We talked about the workers' role in this. We've talked about regulations and regulators' roles in this. So really, at the foundation of these roles is the concept, the question of power. And to conclude our session, I'd like to hear your responses to that fundamental question. Who has power in the situation? What kind of power do they have, and what are their limitations? Absolutely. Okay, we have another one, Professor Armstead, excellent students coming to the mic. Anyone else? The power question? Sean, you look like you have an idea about that.
Hi. My name is David Auer. And well, we all know that in places like Mexico and in lots of other places around the country, around the world, there are two extremes. You're either very rich or very poor. I think ultimately it is the responsibility of the local government, because none of these companies can operate first without the government's permission. Is that right?
Exactly.
And exactly. So, but you know, the government's first responsibility is to its citizens, or it should be. And if you allow a company to come into your territory, your range, or your country, and all they can pay your citizens is $5 a day. Is that it? $5.20 per day for a 12 to 16-hour shift, and their deplorable working conditions, no benefits. I think the first responsibility is the government to ensure that whatever company they give permission to operate in their country, it sets some of the ground rules about what workers should be getting, how long they should be working, what kind of conditions they should be working under, and let that be a guideline for whether or not they want to still pursue the possibility of operating in that particular country. We all know that cheap labor is available all around the world, yes, and you can go from Mexico to Bangladesh like the States. But if these countries where the populations are vast and they're spread so far and wide, I think it's more their responsibility to look out for their citizens and their well-being. Thank you.
I actually agree with what you said, and that reminded me that yesterday I read an article about Mexico and because the economy is really bad right now in Mexico. So what they're planning to do is that they are going to try to have a better education system, so that in about 15 years, they say that in about 2030, they will be expecting a better education system in order, like, for their citizens to have better working conditions, and also the employment rate to go up. And that was pretty interesting, because the problem is that it will take a long time, because 2030 is like really far away. But I think that if they target their education, they will see some changes in their economy. Thank you.
At the end of the day, I believe that it's totally a moral issue where it concerns, or I should say, a moral and ethical issue, where it concerns the conditions where the employees have to work under in order for the company to maximize on its profit. Quite a few points came about concerning, I think it was Bridget who brought up the point that whichever country we're taking our business, if the USWC is taking their business to Mexico, that the same rules and regulations that go to them in the US they should also take it to that country, and that it should be followed through there. And also to say to that country, if you can't comply to our rules, then we would take our business elsewhere. Since it's that these people are in dire need for these jobs and they want the business within their country, this is some of the steps that can be taken to eliminate some of the things that's happening now in the factories. Concerning who has the most power and who is affected most is the employees, I believe, because they're the ones who are working long hours, they're underpaid, they're working under poor conditions, and they're losing out in family time, and and also, what was the young lady's name who was just speaking? Maria? Yeah. She mentioned about education, and that's a good point, because education is key. When somebody is educated and they know what they're to stand for, some of these abuses won't take place. That's my view.
Well, the way I see things, my name is Michelle, the government is getting paid, regardless if they don't really care about what these people are doing or how they're being treated, because they are getting paid. So they have nothing to care for, because they are getting paid just like the company's making a profit. They're also making a profit. So that's the only thing I want to say.
Okay, I have something to say about power. About the ethical part, it's very important that people and companies take their voluntary, the ethical part, because they have the power to give up better conditions to work. But I can say something. We are here speaking about the case that happened in the early 90s, where it says about $5 making a day. I'm pretty sure that people in Mexico, nobody makes less than triple that today, a day. And here in Panama, because I'm not from Mexico, I'm from Panama, the multinational businesses, especially the ones that come from the United States, in any field of business, are normally the ones that provide the better conditions for workers. Not necessarily the better wages, because they go according to the law, but the better conditions they do. Local companies tend to, or local business owners tend to provide less of the better conditions than the multinational businesses. There must be some that don't comply with that ethically, because I'm pretty sure multinational businesses don't go against the law here, but they do normally provide the better conditions. And also, from what the lady of the union that was talking about the unions, if there are people that make less money than the normal by law, is that they are going against the law. So here we're trying to speak inside what the law says, not people that go against the law, because it's the people that go against the law, or the companies that will go against the law, normally will be shut down. So looking at the law, following the law's point of view.
Thank you.
We have another person here that wants to say something.
Okay.
Here in Panama, we have some problem like this. The case of the banana chiquita in Bocas del Toro is near Costa Rica, in the border. They pay less than $1 per day. The people work all the day there, childs work there, and the companies from the States too.
That was 20 years ago.
No.
If one of, I'm talking normally, I know
Yeah,
the exceptions. Normally they use the exceptions as the big propaganda and the big yellow, what do you say there?
Yeah, that's it. That's the syndicat.
But try to go to the normal companies, let's say
Radio
Coca-Cola.
It's a construction company.
Which one?
Radio C-Scoring.
Which one's that one?
It's a company from the state, they're from construction. They have a lot of contract with the government. They make the contract and they close the company and they don't pay to the workers and so they use that legal way of go to bankruptcy.
Well,
without pay to the providers.
I'm talking about the majority of the companies. I can mention a lot. If you want to, you can mention it more. They don't do the way it's supposed to
the
be.
Better salaries in Panama are in the government and the Panama Canal.
Well, the Panama Canal, the government.
In the government.
No, the government
in Panama Canal. That's it. The better salaries.
The better salaries in Panama are in the private sector.
Government and Panama Canal. A professor, Tesla Pecas, they came with statistics about that from Panama.
Okay. So, hi, gentlemen. As you were speaking, we were sort of drifting in and out audio-wise. So just to clarify, the two of you were discussing the relative contrast between employment conditions in Panama versus employment conditions in Costa Rica.
No.
And I understood that there's
nobody mentioned Costa Rica. We were discussing about the multinational businesses that come to Panama. Oriel was talking about the bad conditions that some of them have, and I was talking about that normally they are the ones that provide the better conditions. That's the subject we were discussing.
Okay.
Another example.
Okay, so there's.
I used to work in Maersk Line, the shipping company, like 3 years ago, and I don't know why. I think that the reason is because they make a lot of employment here. That government treat them especially. That no laws, labor laws, can be for Maersk Line, so they can do whatever they want here in Panama. Because the government gave that condition to the company in order that the company feels like safe here, that the investment can be good. So they provide like a lot of jobs to a lot of people here. A lot of people working as management areas, making a lot of money. Workers, like they call blue collars, bad conditions. And I used to work there like, why they treat like white collars, good condition, blue collars, bad condition. I say, why? That's the management way. Like blue collars have to be good. White collar have to be good. Blue collars, you can do whatever they want. That's like they're not even people. They're poor people without education. We don't have to deal with that people. And I say, why? That's that way of thinking that I see on that company. And in a lot of companies, multinational companies.
Okay.
That's normally they tend to go for different laws. The companies that are in charge of exporting and importing. But that's another issue. That's not companies that are working inside Panama. Well, I understood his point of view, but right now in Panama, at 5% unemployment, I'm pretty sure somebody that is not happy with their jobs, they will find some place to work. So I don't think companies can afford to be mistreating, but that's something here in Panama only. I don't think the rest of the world is in that condition right now.
That may or may not be true. I don't know that it's wholly a true or an accurate statement. But so to clarify, there seems to be some difference of opinion with respect to how companies, multinational companies, are conducting business in Panama. And the positionality that I'm understanding in terms of the initial question of power is that the power rests primarily with regulators or regulating agencies, government agencies, to have oversight with the multinational corporations, and then the secondary seat of power rests with the corporations themselves. That's what I'm understanding that seems to be the thrust of the responses to the question. I have one of my students, Jennifer, back here at the camera, and I'd like to give her a chance to express her comments. And then I think, unless anyone else has any other comments, questions, emotional outbursts, we're going to conclude this session. Is that okay? Professor Tercivia, did you have anything else you wanted to say after Jennifer's comments, or are we okay?
Like last time, we'll pose a few questions on the blog page, so if students want to continue discussing the topic, they can.
Okay. And Professor Armstead has given me the no, I don't want to say anything else signal. So I'm going to pass this along to Jennifer. You guys look very comfortable. Our room is very warm, and I have a sense that folks are about ready to exit the sauna. So here you go, Jen.
Well, I just want to say one more thing about education in Mexico. I was also doing some research, and I know that education over there is really, really hard for the poor people, which is the people that will work in factories. It will be really hard for them. Most of these people that get their jobs in factories is because they have very little education or no education because they can't afford to go to school, and getting $5 a day, I'm pretty sure they don't even have money for that kind of education. The people that have that money is the wealthy people, the people that could afford an education, people that can go on and, you know, make another corporate factory and have other people work for them. So I guess it comes down to these people, you know, they really don't even have a choice, because how can they go out there and get a better job with the money that they're making and with no education? That's pretty much it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So with Jennifer's last remark, it kind of rounds out this conversation, and I'd like to leave everyone with the concept, the question, the thought of how much does class-based systems interweave with the dynamic of power as it respects corporations, as it respects regulatory agencies, as it respects individuals. Because at the heart of this, there is the idea of class. That's one major operative idea. And how do we think about and respond to and act about class and class-based systems that drive different segments of what we've been talking about here, that drive industry, that drive industry practice, that drive regulatory and government decisions about what does or does not happen within their territories. So that was my parting comment. And Professor Armstead is going to relent and leave us with some final comments, and we'll say good night after that.
Well, the one thing I wanted to finish this up for myself, wanted to finish this section off with is I want you to think about who are the agents of change in this situation, and who would be more likely to act upon their agency. In other words, who's going to actually do something to change this situation. And with that, I'll leave you good night.
Good night.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for being our camera guy.
No worries. Where do we record? Where do we start the recording here?
You can just go up to the top.
Press the X?
Yeah.
I can't press the X. That's because of the screen size. Sec. This wood.
I got a recording.
¿En serio? ¿Por qué?
Pausa la evidencia, por si acaso, no tienes mañana.
It's still recording, guys, just in case. Leave meeting or exit for all?
I think it's